From out of the night and into the light, from the pyramids of Giza to the pyramids of Mars, from the dark side of the street to the dark side of the moon, from political intrigues and international espionage to hometown shenanigans. This is Strange Universe with your host, Dr. Sean David Morton. The doctor is in, talking about some crazy things that are going on tonight. My guest, coming directly from the horse's mouth, or whichever end you want to view it from, Benjamin Fulford is going to be on as my guest this evening to explain, apparently, directly out from house arrest by the CIA, somewhere from an undisclosed location. For those of you that were listening to the lovely Carrie Cassidy and her Project Camelot program last night, there were a series of rather spectacular histrionics in regards to David Wilcock and David breaking down on Carrie's show because his heart chakra is so open, according to Carrie. Crying, sobbing, really, because Mr. Wilcock claims that his life has been threatened. I love David to death. He's a good friend. And at the same time, it's having your life threatened in this business. Hell, that's Tuesday for me. And try having your friends killed. Danny Casolaro, Computer Times Magazine in Redondo Beach, went to Michigan trying to track down a lead on the Promise software on the Inslaw case. Murdered in a hotel room. Made it look like suicide. Jim Keith, conspiracy researcher, fell off a stage at Burning Man and broke his leg, and 3 days later wound up dead in a hospital in Washoe County. John Hadley, good personal friend of mine for many years, one of the guys that helped me crack open places like Area 51, just got $250,000 from his father, dying from a long, protracted death of cancer, washed his truck, went into his house in the middle of the day in Sacramento, supposedly pulled out a .45, blew out his brains in the middle of the day, wasn't found for a week. I've been shot at from helicopters. I've been threatened with arrest from just about every government agency that I can think of, actually, messing around with places like Area 51 and Dulce. So that's the cutting edge. And as a friend of David's, what did he think was going to happen? I know when you're in the, quote, new age part of this and you're all, fluffy and, I don't know, woo-woo and hoofy-puffy and whatever it is you want to call it when you're just the crazy lady in the purple moo-moo running down the hill in a field of flowers. Everything's cool. But here he is right now, and we've just brought him up. And can you hear me? We've got Benjamin Fulford online calling in from Japan. Benjamin, you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
How are you, sir?
Fine, absolutely fine.
I have an opening question for you here. We were just talking about the situation of what was going on with David Wilcock. We've looked on, we've tried to find this court case that you're talking about because I do a lot of alternative legal work and I work with people in prisons and I do counseling in prisons. And we've been trying to find this court case, and the only court case that we can find as it's referred to on David Wilcock's website, and even if David's website is completely wrong or the information is incorrect, but the only court case that we can find in which Neil F. Keenan is a plaintiff. Once again, we're taking information off David Wilcock's Divine Cosmos website. All of that information on his website is completely in error. There was a guy named Neil F. Keenan who filed a complaint as the plaintiff against defendant Carla Jo Wagenstein.
No. Look, there's something called Court News Service. All right.
Well, Pacer is the official. I have Pacer, Benjamin, and Pacer is the actual official login for the New York Southern District of New York, in which we've been trying to track down this particular court case, and it's not there.
Really?
So I'm just questioning because the court case I have, which is the information on David Wilcock's website for civil docket case number 1:95CV00511-L is...
No, that's not the one. Well, look, I mean,
I'm just trying to find, Benjamin, I'm trying to find the case. I'm just trying to find it because I wanted to see who was what and what was who and who was
look,
sued.
I'm gonna try to send you a file, all right?
Okay.
and then you can put that up on your site. All right, we'll get to that later. But
okay, well, let me know what's been going on. I announced on Tuesday's program that there was a fellow that came on your Japanese web blog, I guess your video web blog, saying that you had been incarcerated, that you were somehow under arrest by the CIA. Benjamin, give it to me. And I've also been reading your posts along the way. Why don't you tell me what's going on?
All right. Now, first of all, there's just a misunderstanding, all right?
Okay.
I was supposed to be on their TV show, but somehow nobody told me. And I was up in the mountains trying to have a private conversation, and I took you go up where you're outside of any sort of cell phone range, and then you leave your phone behind, and you sit by a stream where there's lots of static so you can have privacy. So all these guys who are monitoring me, because, normally my mobile is a GPS portable listening device. They know where I am. They know what I'm talking about. And I was off the radar, and I'm supposed to be on the show, and I'm not there.
Okay.
So they assumed that I had been kidnapped because it's the only thing that made sense. Now, it's not. I have had several attempts against my life. This is true. I can prove it. And I've had, I don't know how many death threats. I guess David Wilcox is new to it, so it excites him. But,
or it makes him cry, one of the two.
Whatever. But for us, it's kind of a part of a normal background hiss,
Yes.
But what came good about all this is that I got a call from representatives of all three major Japanese gangs: the Sumiyoshi, the Yamaguchi, the Inagawa, offering support. The mafia had offered support. The CIA called and said that they were going to try to help me. The Japanese police and the military were also trying to help. So what it shows is that all the people here in Japan who have means of enforcement at their disposal were backing what we're trying to do. And I'm going to try to take that momentum that was, believe me, I did not concoct this situation. It was not some kind of publicity stunt, all right? I'm want to be adamant about that. But nonetheless, it did show how much support there is out there for change, at least in this part of the world.
Well,
and
change and concern for you, Benjamin, because this became a kind of an international story that you had somehow been kidnapped, or you were under somebody's thumb.
I now know that here in Japan, the people who are the problem as far as getting the new financial system involved, it's Mr. Uwada from the International Court of Justice. He's the father of Prince Masako.
Okay.
Former Prime Minister Koizumi.
Yes.
It's a guy called Kuroda, who used to be with the Finance Ministry.
Okay.
A guy called Tatsu Eiichiro, who's the #1 guy at the Finance Ministry.
Right.
And it's David the Rothschild in Geneva, that branch of the Rothschild family. So we have specific individuals now. We're down to that point who are blocking it. And I'd also like to give you some very important intelligence about the situation in the United States.
Okay, take a quick wait, Benjamin, take a quick breath, because here's some good news for you. The other lawsuit that I had, the other lawsuit that was filed by Neil F. Keenan, which, by the way, is the information I believe that's up on David's website, which was incorrect, which pointed to another case in Rhode Island that had been dismissed in like 95. We found the action. Okay, so now, doing a little research, I've got Oracle online here, and she's doing some research for me. So we now found the lawsuit, which is civil docket case CV-08500.
That's right.
And the judge is JFK, which I think is very interesting, that his initials are JFK.
Yeah,
and it is Keenan, and it's actually this is very strange, because it's a judge named John F. Keenan, which I find very unusual, JFK.
Yeah, but apparently no relation. I've asked about that myself.
No relation. And this is, now I'm reading directly from the United States Court docket sheet, Southern District of New York, Foley Square, civil docket for case 1:11-CV-08500-JFK, which is the Judge John F. Keenan. Cause 28:1331, federal question. Plaintiff Neil F. Keenan, individually and as agent for the Dragon family and citizens of foreign states, versus Danielle Del Bosco, a citizen of a foreign state, the Office of International Treasury Control, a foreign country, or OITC, Ray C. Dam, individually and as president of OITC, Defendant David A. Sale, individually and as deputy and chief counsel for the cabinet of the OITC. And these are the list of the defendants. The United Nations. Ban Ki-moon, the Secretary General of the United Nations. H.E. Ambassador Cesar Maria Ragaglini, individual and as permanent representative of the Italian mission to New York, to the UN in New York. Ambassador Laura Murachania,
Look, you can read that later on your show because it's a 111-page document. And you really need to digest it, but I can give you the gist of it now that you have the actual complaint. And I've just sent you on Skype a PDF file of a Courthouse News Service article summarizing the lawsuit. All right.
Got it. Okay.
But anyway, the point is this. All right, let's get to the nitty-gritty because this is important. Essentially, the nations of the world, especially the non-aligned nations, had control of about 85% of the world's traditional treasure, which was gold and diamonds and stuff like this, all right? The other 15% was controlled by European royal families. You know, that would be the Bilderberger types and whatever, all right?
Okay.
Now, these guys, the European royals and all their, coterie, people like the Rockefellers and Bushes and stuff, did not want to allow this 85% of the world's treasure to be included as part of the global financial system. So they took it all, put it in places like the Philippines, Indonesia, and the bottom of the Bermuda Triangle, and they issued these humongous bonds to the owners saying that, we owe you this money, right?
Right.
But they never intended to pay it.
Okay.
They just wanted to make sure they stayed in control of the global financial system, and they wanted to take all that gold off market. Okay?
Yes, sir.
And what this case was about was this group that has the title said, hey, here's your $1 trillion bonds that you gave us in exchange for that gold. We want to cash it. And instead they stole it, and they offered us $100 million to go away and then not bother with this whole thing. Or not us. I'm not part of it, all right? But I say that because I've been, closely involved. Although I'm not a party to the lawsuit and I'm not claiming ownership of this gold. Make that clear here. But the point is that the owners are saying, hey, you owe us this gold. Give us the gold or the equivalent. And they don't have the gold to give. But giving it would mean losing control of the dollar and the euro and the world's financial system. And that is why we're having a crisis now in the euro. That's why you're having the Lehman shock. It's all related to this high-level battle at the very top of the financial system. And I do want to get back, based on all my information, and I've been on this case directly and with my life at stake for years now. And you can go into details and lose yourself in a labyrinth, but let me just tell you something for people working for the good guys, all right? Here's a list of people who control the Pentagon payroll.
All right.
Arrest these people, and you can get control of the paychecks for all the people in the agencies, and then they will start listening to you, all right? So it's Henry Kissinger, Frank Carlucci, Paul Wolfowitz, James Baker, Donald Rumsfeld, and Zbigniew Brzezinski, and George Soros, too, for good measure. Get those men, and you're a free country once again. Put them in jail. They're criminals, they're mass murderers, and they shouldn't be in high-powered offices. And if you're one of the guardmen for these people, when they come to arrest them, please just put down your weapons and stand back. You're not involved. Nobody's going to put you in jail. Just don't fight the law enforcement officials who go to arrest these thugs. All right?
Well, I think the French had the right idea when they invented the guillotine for people like that.
Well, maybe, but for now, you just get them off the signing of the paychecks, and then that will turn the situation around in the U.S.
Okay, Benjamin, hang on. We're just going to take a quick break here. This is Sean David Morton. It's a Strange Universe, and we just work here. We are making history with Benjamin Fulford explaining it all for you, and we'll be back in a few beats of your heart.
I can read your mind. I can read your mind. Welcome to the world's meeting place. American.
It's practically narcotic.
Freedom.
Oh, yes, I like very much.
Radio.
You're an American institution.
American Freedom Radio.
This is Sean David Morton. We are back on Strange Universe Radio. My guest, our friend, support of the show, support of the network, live from Japan, the amazing, the courageous Benjamin Fulford. And we are discussing a civil complaint that's been filed in the U.S. District Court of the Southern District of New York, Neil F. Keenan, under Judge John F. Keenan, individually and as agents for the Dragon family and against citizens of foreign states. This guy is taking on the United Nations. He's taking on ambassadors from various countries. And actually, we just downloaded the complaint. I will read it probably tomorrow and have some updates for you on Friday. But just the PDF alone, the complaint, you're right, Benjamin, is 140 pages long, detailing a series of financial skullduggery and wrongdoing. Go ahead.
This is real McCoy. I mean, and the CIA is deeply involved. The NSA and all these guys are actually good guys within those agencies, all right?
Okay.
But what happened was they took $1 trillion worth of these bonds that were real, but that it's sort of like, a mafia boss gives you an IOU, right? And he never expects to have to pay back the money. But then you show up at his headquarters with the IOU, you say, hey, man, you owe me $1 million, right?
Yes.
And he can't believe it. He says, well, aren't you scared of me? I mean, this is the sort of situation we're dealing with. These are bonds that were backed by historical gold in Asia. And remember that since the Roman times, the Asians have been exporting silk and spices and ceramics to the West, and they've been getting gold and diamonds in payment. And so they had 85% of the world's store of precious metals, and the whole reason, one of the whole reasons for World War II was to take that gold out of their control, so that the financial elite, the people as the Bilderbergers, the Council on Foreign Relations in the West, could control the global financial system, and thus control the direction of human affairs to a very large extent.
All right. All right.
And there are many different subtexts to this, but one very important one was in 1938 when 7 warships full of Chinese gold left for the U.S., and the Chinese who gave the gold to safekeeping, because they didn't want the Japanese to steal it, were given 60-year U.S. government bonds. And after 60 years, they're supposed to get the gold back. And in 1998, they sued to get their gold back, and they won. But the owners of the Federal Reserve Board didn't have the gold, and they were supposed to start giving back the gold on September 12th, 2001. And the people involved in all this were working in the World Trade Center building, and the gold was supposed to be in the basement there. I've said this before, but it's provable. And so instead of giving back the gold, they blew it all up and then gave them the finger, and say, you want your gold, you just come and try to take it, buddy, and then it's this crazy stuff, but it's true.
Well, there were individuals in the U.S. Mafia that were directly connected to the Bonanno family and others that were saying that that all of the gold that was in WTC-7 was stolen. They blamed it on the Bushes. They said it was the Bush family. But there were photographs that were released on the 10th anniversary of 9/11, specifically of firemen who were standing around, in full gear with it looked like a scene out of Goldfinger, with 007, strapped to a bomb in Fort Knox.
Yeah. Now, but really, what's happened is that the people who controlled the dollar and the euro ran out of gold. To back it up. And so their money was starting to be backed up by thin air. And furthermore, they couldn't agree among themselves on who would be in charge. And they started, each of them, creating these astronomical numbers, which just don't have any basis in reality. And it got so out of whack that the whole system became dysfunctional. And all that stuff is kept off market in what's known as the shadow banking system. Because what happens is that if you're in the public banking system where you have to publish the numbers, you have to follow certain rules. And they wanted to escape from the rules, so they took it all to these offshore trading centers, and there they went crazy. But every once in a while, they try to launder that money into the public system, and that's where you get trouble. But if you imagine, the derivatives, these guys are like high-level gamblers, okay? And whatever one guy wins, the other guy loses. And they took these numbers to such ridiculous extents that, they say, hey, man, you owe me $800 trillion. Well, world GDP is $60 trillion. So, of course, the guy can't pay,
Are you thinking that the world derivative market also, which is somewhere around a quadrillion dollars or so, which, again, to explain to people briefly what derivatives are, is there a bet on a bet, in essence? If two people are betting that two birds are going to fly off a fence at once, and the one guy says, well, I'll bet you $100 the bird on the right flies away, a third person comes along and says, well, I'll take that bet because now theoretically money is in play, even though it hasn't changed hands.
Let's put it a different way. All right, here's a really easy to understand example. It's leverage. Okay, there was a real case in California of a Mexican worker earning $12,000 a year, an illegal immigrant. They gave him a loan to buy a house, a $750,000 house with no down payment. Okay, of course, he's not, and for the first 5 years, he doesn't have to pay back the principal, okay?
Okay.
So, of course, they know right from the beginning that loan is going to go bad, but it doesn't matter. They've got a $750,000 piece of real estate, okay? They put that into a real estate fund, okay? And then they multiply it by 100. So you get $75 million from that one illegal Mexican worker's $12,000 a year income in the real world. And you multiply that by all the subprime loans and all that other stuff, and you get something totally out of whack. And they were hoping to hide their profits offshore, crash the U.S. economy, and then buy everything at 2 cents to the dollar and kind of complete their takeover of the United States. And we're trying to freeze them out. We're blocking their accounts. There's another very important thing to understand. This is what these people are most scared of about this lawsuit and about what we're doing, is that we have the codes now to the black screens.
Okay.
Now, a black screen is something that they have in the most inner sanctum of a central bank, okay? It's a place where basically you type in money. You punch in a special code, like when you buy new software, only much more complicated. Yep. And then you type in like whatever you're authorized, say $10 billion, $10 billion, and enter, and boom, it's in your bank account. Okay.
It's the photonic money system, basically the photonic money system where money is now just blips of light, not really based on anything.
So we have a detailed record of who was illegally creating money ever since the Kennedy assassination.
Okay.
Since the past 50 years, and theoretically we could put them all in jail, and that would basically put in, maybe 100, 200,000 people who are the source of the problem. We could put them in jail theoretically because they never had a legal international contract to back their right to create that money. It was at its very, very essence fraud. That's why they're scared. In the old days, okay, like, if it's gold-based, at the very least, you say, well, I have this gold, I have this historical ownership, it's been in my family ever since we conquered the Incas,
Yes.
And we're going to give you gold in exchange for services. At least you're getting the gold, whoever's giving them the services, right? So, all right, maybe, the Incas could sue them or something, but the point is that there's something real there, okay?
Maybe Neil Keenan might want to represent the Incas at some point in the future.
but if you don't have anything, it's just you're lying. You don't have anything, and you're saying you do. It's fraud.
Right. Yes.
And that's what happened when they got off the gold standard or any sort of asset-based financial system. It became fraudulent, and furthermore, there was no international treaty that actually gave them the right to do this. They did it simply because they had the goons working for them. They were the biggest gangsters on the planet.
Well, it became like so much of everything else, which is now under the color of law That it's all
Yeah,
assumed to be legal because they've just been doing it.
Yeah, we killed Kennedy in public, and nobody did anything about it.
Right.
We killed Sukarno, or we threw him out of office, and Marcos, and anybody else who opposed us.
In Indonesia, Marcos and Marcos and Panama. Yes.
What happened was that the Chinese and the Russians and the Japanese and a bunch of other people finally said enough is enough, and they said, look, if you want World War III, we'll have it, but we're not going to give in to your bullying anymore. Now give us back the money, and get your hell off the control of the global financial system. Okay. And that's what and they're all from the same ethnic group, more or less. They're Khazarians from Central Asia, right. Originally,
well, they would be mixed with, and again, I misspoke. Marcos was in the Philippines. I'm sorry, I was talking about Omar Torrijos, actually in Panama.
Yeah, Torrijos worked for them, and then they decided to dump him. Marcos used to work for him, then he decided that actually he'd rather develop the Philippines, so they dumped him. Right. I mean, they've got a list of murders, of prominent murders going way back. I mean, they've created enemies everywhere on Earth. They're scared. I tell you, they're scared, and they should be scared because all they got is this fake money printing machine, and now we know it's fake and it's fraud. They've got nothing. They're little old men hiding in their giant castles with nobody to protect them. And I'm going to tell you, after this interview, I'm going straight downtown to the Rothschild office in Tokyo, and I'm going to tell them that either they back off or it's war. Enough is enough.
And if it comes to now, this is a big question, Ben. Mm-hmm. If it comes to war, what would a war with these people look like? Is it because you've talked in the past about the White Dragons having I don't know what you would call it, a third force, almost a Mission Impossible Ghost Protocol kind of strike force? Well, that if they could only take out, hold on, let me finish that. If we could only take out these 1,000 people, that in a night of the long knives kind of conspiracy, where these 1,000 people are then taken out, or they take out the 300 or so people that attend the Bilderberg conference, where, and again, we're talking about just taken out, assassinated, done, just properly executed, if you will, that the revolution begins. Number one, who is it that would take these people out? Because I'm looking for the white hats in this scenario. There's some people saying it's the Russians and Vladimir Putin's a good guy. Other people saying that it's Admiral Fox Fallon, who's currently running the Joint Chiefs of Staff inside the Pentagon. It seems to me that, again, because you have the news media beating the drum for, and again, it looks as though the United States is going to come out on top with this whole European thing, where it looks like we're just annexing the Europeans. So, bring some clarity to this as to what a war between the good guys and who they are and the bad guys and who they are would look like.
It is, unfortunately, I really at the beginning thought it would be very simple, but it turns out that most of the people in the U.S. government and the very top ranks of the military have these humongous Vatican bank accounts, okay?
Yes.
And so you have generals who are bribed, and then they have colonels who listen to what they say, and if you don't do it right, like when I first proposed to the Asians that they just go out and they shoot these people. No, I didn't say shoot them. I said grab them all and put them in a stadium somewhere,
a little hard to do with the richest people on the planet who have resources.
But, all you need to grab is like 200 old men, and they had the element of surprise. Unfortunately, they were too scared, and they were scared. I mean, these guys, they run the triads and stuff, but they looked scared. I'll be honest with you, all right?
Okay.
I don't think I guess they just chickened out, but they decided they would take a more legal approach, which is what this whole thing with the bonds is. They're saying, look, we're going to go through the law system and say, hey, you owe us this money. And what they've been doing is they've been steadily building up a support network among the CIA, the Pentagon, and other groups to try to do this peacefully, because we were dealing, you got to remember this, the people we're dealing with were trying to start World War III. And they wanted to set off a nuclear holocaust, and they wanted to all go to South America or to their underground shelters. And so, fighting people who want to start a war is not the best strategy. And the result, of course, is it took a lot longer, and it's been very, very frustrating to try to take these people down in a legal manner. And that's what you need to get the white hats in the Pentagon and the agencies, because these guys are, legal types. They're very into following rules and obeying orders. And it's hard to get into their heads that the people giving you orders are crooks,
Yeah.
but a slow, systematic mind change has taken place. And the other thing that's happened, and this is something that we have done that's important, is that we've cut off their access to the black screens, all right? Except for within the U.S., they're not, their dollars are not being accepted. That's why, think about it. The IMF was supposed to be the highest single financial institute on Earth. Institution on Earth. When Russia went bankrupt, they went to the IMF. Okay.
And now the IMF literally is walking around with a tambourine, begging for money from somebody. Who does the IMF beg money from? That's the thing I can't understand.
Well, that's the thing. The rest of the world has the real money that's based on, putting things in boxes and putting them in ships and sending them across the ocean and getting a receipt. Real stuff. And that's China, Russia, Japan, and some of the oil exporting countries. They have the real money, and they're saying we're not going to give it to these scumbags who took over your banks.
Take a quick breath. My guest is Benjamin Fulford. This is Sean David Morton. It's a strange universe, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome into my strange universe. We're going to be back to talk about the war to come. Strange universe marinated for weeks in a special sauce so you can taste the difference. Strange universe bringing you the pinnacle of 16.4 billion years of evolution. With me, your host, Sean David Morton, the 5-star general of Generation Y, the admiral on the oceans of truth and justice, the glass plus for the windows of your soul. Listening to Strange Universe one time is equal to a 4-year college education, so why bother spending the money? Again, if you are just joining us on this historic evening, last night there was a Megillah, a ruckus, if you will, a histrionic download of information with David Wilcock and America's sweetheart Carrie Cassidy on Project Camelot. And something occurred where David Wilcock claims to have, he wrote a number of articles about the gentleman that I have on my program this evening that then led to what David claimed were death threats against his life. For people like Benjamin Fulford and myself, that's pretty much a Tuesday. We laugh in the face of danger, mwahaha, in a manly way with a manly laugh. And Benjamin Fulford is my guest, and we are talking about a lawsuit that was filed. We did find it. The information, I believe, on David Wilcock's website is inaccurate, but we did find the civil docket case for a lawsuit filed by Neil F. Keenan on behalf of the Dragon family, citizens of foreign states, basically against the global banking establishment. And what Benjamin Fulford is enlightening us with now is giving us the details of a coming war between the White Dragons, or the Dragon family, or let's hope the forces of good on this planet. There have to be some. There have got to be a few rich people left with a soul, other than somebody like, say, Foster Gamble as an example, versus the Bush, Clinton, Rockefeller crime syndicate, the Rothschilds, George Soros, et cetera, et cetera. So Benjamin Fulford, take it away again.
All right. Again, essentially, we've always had two kinds of power. One is being financial, control the money. The other has been the public opinion-based political system.
Yes.
And what's happened is that the people who control the financial part, they didn't earn that position. They stole it through mafia-like tactics. And the issue we face now, though, of course, is, are we just going to replace one mafia with another mafia, or are we going to try to come up with some system that would actually put control of the global financial system into the hands of the people, but in such a way as it doesn't just get taken away from them again?
Yes. Yes.
And so, that's what the holdup is right now, is saying, all right, well, so we take it away from them, but what next? And you have these different groups saying, no, put me in charge, and no, put me in charge. And a lot of these guys are quite powerful, and so there's a disagreement over what comes next. And that's the big roadblock to, resolving the situation. Right now, it's all frozen until they figure out what to do next, and we're trying to build up a consensus. Now, the thing I'm personally recommending is that you don't have it in the control of a single group, and it's certainly not a secret group, that the traditional, families and groups that actually earn their money can keep it and do whatever they do, build companies or whatever it is they do. But we also want to take the money that was stolen, by these fake printing of money by the feds, and put it into some kind of fund on behalf of the people of the planet. And I've proposed, at least for part of it, is to create an international economic planning agency, which would be something that anybody could write the exam to join. They would have open meetings, about how they decide what to do, what their plans are. They'd have press conferences to be totally transparent. And the aim would be to do big things like turn deserts green, multiply the amounts of fishes, build space colonies, big projects for the future of the planet. Because at the end of the day, the financial system is the process of deciding what we as a species are going to do next with this planet. And that should not be controlled in secret by a cabal of old gangsters.
Do you think 2012 has a lot to do with that, the coming turning of the Great Age,
Well,
the last sunset, which is described by the Mayans?
Well, it was not. It was the beginning of a new 26,000-year cycle.
Correct.
But I think that there was a French mathematician who predicted the day of his own death. When that day came, he was so scared he committed suicide. And so, what I'm proposing is that we actually do end the world on the 2012.
December 21st, 2012, right?
But and that's a big solar cycle. It has to do with our ancient traditional sort of sky-based calendars, right?
Yes.
And it's a 26,000-year wobble coming to an end. And we should use that to have, instead of like a world war or something, we have a huge party and then do something like, for example, reset the calendar so that it becomes a year zero, day one, on December 22nd, 2012 would be day one, year zero,
right. Well, Benjamin, they did that. They did that with the millennium. If you'll notice, on January 1st of 2000, the weather was beautiful all over the world. There was peace everywhere. There was not a single war that was going on. There were a couple of civil wars. There was a period of time from 91 to 2001, the longest extended period of peace and prosperity in human history.
Yeah. Well,
all of this being disrupted by the planned conspiratorial attack by the military-industrial complex or the same crime syndicates as you're talking about, that then not only lead to 9/11 and the attacks on 9/11, the theft of a massive amount of gold from underneath WTC-7, which was then pulled, quote-unquote, by Larry Silverstein, and apparently on September 11th of 2008, between 9 a.m. and 11 a.m., the spiking of the global computers as well, which seems to have actually then stolen $3.5 trillion out of the global economy, which then it's interesting because then suddenly your story about the two Japanese businessmen, which I shouldn't say your story, but the story about the two Japanese businessmen dressed literally dressed like Odd Job, again, from the movie Goldfinger. They're wearing bowler hats and tuxedos, if you will, who then get caught on a train between Italy and Switzerland with $135.6 billion in bonds that can then be traced almost directly. This is in February of 2009. They can then be traced directly to this sword fishing, if you will, this spiking using the Promise software of the global financial system. And had it not shut down, it would have stolen about $700 trillion out of the world economy, and the Western civilization as we know it would have ended. Which is now where we're in the state where we're in economic free fall all over the world. All of these things, now we have to have the bailouts and all that. So,
okay. First of all, the two Japanese were Watanabe and Yamaguchi. Watanabe is linked to the Japanese royal family. Yamaguchi linked to the we'll get into that. But these guys were trying to cash these bonds, but apparently they were the plan was from day one to steal it from them. The people behind that apparently were Greenspan and those guys, and it didn't go quite according to plan. This is this is a high level financial warfare. This is the real sort of spies with guns and intrigue over control of these black screens, control of the process creation of money, and as a result, control the future of the planet. That battle is still going on, but essentially there were two factions battling. I saw one would be the Nazis under George Bush Sr. and those guys, and the other would be the people working under the Rothschilds, the old British royals, and the third group would be the Asians and the rest of the world, and the people who backed Kennedy, who said this is all crazy, you know. Anyway, look, the way I understand it is that the system is going to keep falling apart because these guys are not going to go quietly in the night, and we still haven't reached a consensus on what's going to come next. And so there's going to be more hardship, but it's not a global financial crisis, okay? Average growth in the world is 7% a year, except for Europe and North America, all right? This is a Western financial crisis because the gangsters who took over the Western financial system are no longer being welcomed as world leaders by the rest of the planet. And we're trying to liberate the people of the European nations from this Babylonian-type slave control by this inbred group of gangsters. And when that happens, humanity will be once again free to dream what they want to do in the future and then try to carry it out in a realistic way. That's what the battle's about. Now listen, I have to head out the door now. I'm off to see the Rothschild headquarters here in Japan, and but this battle is going well, and these guys are doomed, okay? Humanity will be free. I guarantee you 100%. These guys will be removed from power. I gave you the names of the key people you need to get get control of the Pentagon and agency payrolls. You control your payrolls, you can get the military working for you. And that needs to be done by white hats, and it is happening, okay? There are people in the agencies and at the Joint Chiefs of Staff who understand this very well, and the United States will be once again a free constitutional democracy. I guarantee it.
Well,
all right, gotta go.
220 years ago, the Bill of Rights was ratified again. Benjamin, I cannot thank you enough. I hope you come back and give us updates.
We'll talk again when there's more to talk about. All right, you have a good day.
Thank you, Benjamin. I'm glad you're okay.
Good night.
All right, good night. Well, there he goes. Okay, again, what we've been talking about here has been that last night David Wilcock was on Kerry Cassidy's program and was talking about death threats against his life and was pretty upset about it. So you've just heard from the man himself. That is Benjamin Fulford. He has not been abducted. He's not under CIA arrest. And he's going right now to tell the Rothschilds what he thinks. This is Sean David Morton. Yeah, it's a strange universe, and we just work here. And we'll be back in a few beats of your heart with more stuff and taking your phone calls. Let me know what you think. If you will be so kind as to call us at 218-339-8525. That's 218-339-8525. And give us a lingual, symbolic, sonic, vocal engram on this crude communications device with your immediate numeric quantum time-space coordinates. We will respond to your transmission for help, assistance, instruction, and evolutionary advancement as soon as we return to this vibrational frequency that you humans call the present. It's a strange universe, and we just work here. Okay, so Sean David Morton here, America's sweetheart, the Scott Farkas of Internet Radio, mugging you for your lunch money in the back alley on your way to school because I have yellow eyes, and bringing you the pinnacle of 16.4 billion years of evolution. All right, that was Benjamin Fulford in a hit and run here for an hour where he's got to go. Apparently right now he's storming down to Rothschild headquarters to pound his fist and stamp his feet and tell the Rothschilds the way it is, by goodness gracious. And if you listen to that little historic piece of information and you have an opinion, give us a call at 218-339-8525. There has been some misunderstandings on this because David Wilcock had some information up on his website that was supposedly this lawsuit by Neil F. Keenan. And I do a lot of work in the legal field. Again, getting my life threatened is pretty much, well, that's Tuesday for me. I've been shot at from helicopters. I've been chased. I've had friends be killed. I've been threatened over and over and over again. Again, it's just because, as Fulford said, it's just kind of a buzz in the background. Obviously, David's kind of new to all this stuff, David Wilcock, and I'm not exactly sure what he thought was going to happen, so I guess he just thought it was all, hot girls and expos and things. But, he was pretty upset on Kerry Cassidy's program last night. Again, give us a call, 218-339-8525, if you've got any opinions. One thing, again, is that the last message, this was on Monday, December 12th, that Fulford put out to everybody, talked about the fascist cabal known as the Bilderbergers, and he had a chance to talk to them because, again, he was on his way to storm off to the Rothschilds. But him talking about they're desperately and without hope trying to start World War III, which they are. I mean, this is true. They are trying to get, the Israelis specifically, are desperately trying to get some kind of war going with Iran. And no matter what they do, the Pentagon has thwarted them. They've thwarted war plans since the Bush administration. They're apparently thwarting Obama's war plans, although, again, Obama is a weird cat. He's walking a very odd line between having to suck up to pretty major Israeli money interests for his reelection versus his Islamic upbringing, his friendship with the Saudi Arabians, the possibility that his biological father was Malcolm X. Yeah, you heard me. And the fact that the Saudi Arabians have been responsible for Obama's career. They're the ones that wrote him the letter for him to get into Harvard. They made him head of the Harvard Law Review by donating $20 million to Harvard University, even though he'd flunked out of Cornell. I'm sorry, what am I talking about? He flunked out of Occidental. We have no record of him actually ever being at Columbia, even though he claims he was there. He was schoolmates with George Stephanopoulos, and Stephanopoulos never met him. So it's interesting. So again, Fulford was saying that their efforts to start World War III will fail because the Pentagon and the agencies in the U.S., this is Fox Fallon, my hero, who's currently running the Joint Chiefs of Staff, are preparing to remove them from power, according to CIA and other sources. For example, multiple investigations are closing in on alleged President Obama, including one for illegally declaring war on Libya. This is true. 9 Democrats, actually led by Dennis Kucinich, and of course in a voice of outrage by Ron Paul, who I think won the Iowa caucus debate this evening, but will probably not. The media will not rack it up that way, and I certainly hope he wins the Iowa caucuses. But again, he declared war on Libya, started bombing Libya and attacking Libya, a country that not only had not done anything to us, but had bent over backwards to be our friends since 2003, took out the terrifying dictator, Muammar Gaddafi, who oppressed his people so badly that if you got married, he gave you $50,000. Gas was 19 cents a gallon. Health care was free. If you studied abroad, you got $100,000. You got scholarships if you studied anywhere in the world. He was in the process of building a film studio there. He had just bought banks in Italy, 2 banks in Italy. He was trying to buy British Petroleum, which is another reason why he was targeted by the Rothschilds. He did not have a central bank that was controlled by the Rothschilds, and there are now only 3 countries left that do not have central banks controlled by the Rothschilds. And guess what? Those are rogue, renegade states that consist of North Korea, Cuba, and Iran. Now you know why they're rogue states and why they must be brought down. But a count among U.S. representatives, now according to Fulford, he says show the necessary votes to impeach Barack Obama. I completely disagree. I don't think they would ever touch that with a 10-foot pole. He says this is also what U.S. law enforcement officials say. That I think he's just making up. In addition, evidence of bribery and other forms of illegally tampering with the government is being compiled against George Soros, among others. There's also a lot of going on under and on the surface in Europe, Japan, and the Middle East. Again, that's called lobbying. You get to tamper with the government as long as you have money. They call you a lobbyist, so you can tamper all you want. Barack Obama, again, took something like, I think 90% of his campaign money came from either Wall Street and or George Soros. So he's George Soros's boy, right, left, and center. All right, so I mean, now you heard it. Let's hear what you folks have to say as far as your comments here. Please give us a call. Strange Universe 218-339-8525. My old buddy Russell from Kansas. How you doing, Russell?
Hey, Sean. Go Ben.
What's up, brother? What do you think? Are we on the are we on the verge of the white hats or the white dragons or the good guys cleaning up the world for us? Pick a side.
Yeah, well, I'm still waiting on the Night of 1,000 Knives. I think that's what we need, but I can see how that might cause problems. But I just wanted to thank you for putting some perspective on that. I tuned in last night and I heard that broadcast. I got to tell you, man, I was totally creeped out. I thought it sounded like an episode of War of the Worlds or something, just so strange. I mean, the guy that was the call-in was supposed to be helping him out, like, talking like he was from another planet, talking to him on Skype or something like that.
Hold on one second, Russell. Let me bring other people into the conversation. A person called from out of the blue with a very bad Irish accent, and I know because my grandmother was Irish. So he called in to say, "Well, I just want to tell you that's we're protecting you, and I'm calling from further away than you could possibly imagine." And he wouldn't say his name, wouldn't say where he was calling from, and said something about, just so you know, we're protecting you, and it's going to be okay, and we've got your back. And meanwhile, David is just. I mean, he's weeping like John Boehner with the Democrats holding up a puppy, and Kerry Cassidy saying, "Well, it's all because his heart chakra being open and all this." So it became this. You're absolutely right. It became this kind of theater of the absurd, where he was talking about how he'd somehow been threatened or somebody said something bad to him. And again, welcome to my world, man. Like I said, that's Tuesday for me. If I don't get a death threat at least once a day, I think I'm not doing something right. But what was your take on it ultimately, Russell?
Well, what totally threw me off, he was talking like this was some new revelation, and he was going to post it on his website. So I go to his website, and it's like, well, this is nothing different than what you and Ben Fulford have been saying for, a while. It's like, how come now all of a sudden, just because he reposts something that's been going on for a long time, all of a sudden it's a big deal, It's like, I didn't get that at all. But anyway,
certainly David knows how to work the web, knows how to do, the postings and the stuff and the meta tags and all that, to get his stuff out there. And again, I like David. I've spent time with David. I tried to take David to a football game. He didn't know what football was really, or couldn't understand it. And like, why are people so angry? I don't understand. Why is the red team like all mad at the white team? And I just told my wife, look, you sit next to him tonight and explain football to him, will you? But again, just to be clear, when we pulled the information off his website about the lawsuit he's talking about was a lawsuit that this Neil F. Keenan guy filed in Rhode Island back in, I think, 95, which was then dismissed. Then we found the proper lawsuit. This thing's 140 pages long. Oddly enough, under Judge John F. Keenan, filed by this Neil F. Keenan, and it's against the UN and all these other people. It's 140 pages. The last lawsuit against this Megan Stillenberger or something that this Neil F. Keenan guy filed in Rhode Island was summarily dismissed as basically harassment or just the ravings of a crazy person. So, again, yes, there's a lawsuit. Yes, it's from the Dragon family, citizens of foreign states, and what have you. I have not read it because we just found it. It actually took me most of the day searching on Pacer, and it didn't help that Wilcox information was incorrect on his website, which I'm afraid, if people go to it and try to actually download the case, that they'll say, well, it's a hoax or a fraud or whatever else because they were not given the proper case number on this. But, Russell, when you've been at this, this ain't my first rodeo, and I feel sort of like now that Art Bell's gone, I'm sort of the grand old man of this because I've been at this for such a long time. And you and I both know that there's been, did you ever get any of the postings from these people that claim to be something called Nasara? Have you ever heard of Nasara?
I get so many postings. I don't know. I don't try to keep track of all of them.
Oh, well, there's a group out there called Nasara. Nasara stands for something. I'm not sure what Nasara stands for, but it's the same kind of thing that's been going on for about 20 years or so, where Nasara claims that, 9/11 was because we were going to take over the government and put the money system back, and the military was going to take over, and they were going to hang the people in Congress and the Senate, and restore the Constitution, blah blah blah, et cetera, and then of course blah blah blah, et cetera. So it's been the same thing. Back in over Christmas of 1992, I think it was between 92 and 93. Over Christmas, where Clinton had just been elected president. I actually went to a meeting of, some very wealthy people at Paul Fisher's house, who is the guy who invented the Fisher space pen. So he's a fairly wealthy guy. And these were there were some government operatives there and some guys from the NSA and some very interesting things. And they had this whole conspiracy thing going on where they were talking about how they believed that George Bush was not going to leave office, that he was going to declare some kind of national emergency, that he was going to stay in power and all this other stuff. And I'm a kid. This is back in, like 92 or so, a long time ago. And I was the only one that raised my hand and said, do you guys not know that Bush and Clinton are actually really good pals? Do you people not know that Clinton was running sheepdog on the Mena, Arkansas cocaine operation for years? That the only reason he got cut out of that was because he shrank their laundry and he wanted a bigger cut of the cocaine money that was coming in through Arkansas, and that Bush and Clinton are best pals, and the whole thing about them running against each other and the whole deal that they're handing this whole thing off to him. Did you guys not realize that he's actually related to the Rockefellers? And I can give you this whole thing about how he's actually one of the about how his mother, Virginia Kelly, was one of the 38 illegitimate children that Winthrop Rockefeller had throughout the South, which is the direct blood connection to Bill Clinton and the Rockefeller clan. And I'm like, they finally got the Rockefeller boy in. Bill Clinton is blood relations to the Rockefellers, to Winthrop Rockefeller. They're really good buddies. And what are you guys talking about, that they're going to take over the country? They've already taken over the country. They're the ones in control. What makes you think that Bush is going to take everything over? And, of course, I got sort of shouted down at this meeting because they were so up in this whole conspiracy. And I might also point out, and this is the one thing I didn't have a chance to talk to Fulford about, was, again, since 2008, the United States military, specifically the Joint Chiefs of Staff, again, are doing something called Operation Unified Vision 2012. And since 2008, they've been studying what is going to be the response of the United States military, specifically the Pentagon, when you have a complete, total financial and economic collapse of the United States. We're talking about a triggered series of bankruptcies that I think is going to start with the state of Indiana. And if Indiana goes first, then we're going to look at a series of states that are going to start to go. Alabama, Arkansas. There's already towns in California that are declaring bankruptcy, California after that. And, in each one of these states, as they go bankrupt, what is the military's response going to be to a completely bankrupt United States? And they're expecting this to happen. This is why it's called Operation Unified Vision. It's interesting that it's Unified Vision as in trying to keep the United States together, but it's also interesting that they're expecting this to happen this next summer, in the summer of 2012.
I'll be in Montana by then.
Okay. All right, Russell. Well, look, thanks for your input, and thanks for giving us a call on Strange Universe. I always appreciate your input, and have a blessed night, man. God love you. Thank you again. All right, thanks. Let's talk to what do we got here? Let's talk to 585.
Hi.
Hi. Who's this?
This is John. I'm from Rochester, New York.
Hey, John. How are you? What's going on in Rochester? What's going on behind your eyes tonight, man? What do you think about all this?
Well, I'm a college kid, and I kind of feel a little bit alone sometimes, and thinking about all this stuff. And I actually had one of my professors the other day call me a tinfoil hat wearing person, so that was fun.
Well, welcome to the club of tinfoil hat wearing people. It makes a really nice hat, and appreciate having you in our special club.
Well, I've been listening to a lot of the stuff that Cliff High on Webbot's been talking about, and but he recently said something about war in March or something. Do you have any opinion on that?
It's certainly possible. I think. Look, I would not put anything past Barack Obama. I would not put anything past him. He's already, and again, I told you what his conundrum is. His conundrum is, on the one hand, he is dyed-in-the-wool Muslim, and and a supporter of Saudi Arabia and been supported by Saudi Arabia. And on the other hand, in order for him to get reelected, he's going to have to kiss up to the major Israeli-based financial interests. At the center of your brain, from the G to the O to the D, the generator, operator, destroyer.
In the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth. And the earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep. And the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters. And God said, "Let there be light." And there was light. And God saw the light, that it was good.
And God saw Strange Universe with Sean David Morton hosting it and said, "It is good. It is good." John from Rochester, New York, you still online with us?
Yep.
Okay, John. So, what's up? We're welcoming John into our wonderful club where aluminum foil makes a very nice hat, and we're teaching him how to put the paper clips on the back so that they go all the way down to the ground, so that the government cannot read your mind from space. So, so once again, I got a bunch of calls to get through here. So what's on your mind, John? What do you think, man? Where do you think it's all going?
Well, I don't really know. I mean, I am interested in some of the predictions you have about the future, because you seem to be pretty accurate in the past. But the main thing I'm worried about is, kind of the breakdown of society to whatever extent, whatever that may be. I don't know if we're going to end up being like Mel Gibson in The Road Warrior or what, but it doesn't seem very good.
Well, again, this is the big question. If you're looking at I personally think that we're not going to really have much choice. That it's already beginning to happen, where the states themselves are beginning to realize that they've got to do something. I mean, the Federal Reserve has basically just completely lost its mind. It's not even an aspect of prophecy or prediction. I was told by bankers who had big caches of these newly printed $100 bills in a huge banking warehouse in Amsterdam, and this was in April of 2005, where they were saying, "Look, they're going to turn your economy into the Weimar Republic. You're basically about ready to become Japan in the 80s." And they said there was about $60 billion of these newly printed $100 bills that were in warehouses all around the world, where they were just going to start hyperinflating the currency. And by God, they did. And I predicted that they would do this, that they would take the Federal Reserve note off what's called the M3 index, which means they don't even have to tell you how much money's in circulation. So you don't even see inflation reports anymore. I mean, Richard Nixon introduced wage and price controls in 1973 because he saw inflation at 4% as a threat to the stability of the United States. Oh, my Lord. I said a year ago that we'd be at 30% inflation, and lo and behold, a year later, the dollar's worth 27% less than it was. And again, we're in financial freefall, because these banksters, these thugs worldwide, and that's very much where I agree with Benjamin Fulford on all of this, have basically just been given so much rope that they're hanging themselves. Today, 220 years ago, today, the Bill of Rights was passed. The Bill of Rights as a response to those like Samuel Adams and those like Patrick Henry, give me liberty and give me death, who saw the Constitution as a threat to the sovereignty of the states, which were actually already under the Articles of Confederation, which was working just fine. Now we've got the Bill of Rights, and again, 220 years ago it was ratified, and you'll notice that the only person that seems to care of all the presidential candidates is Ron Paul, and Ron Paul is the only guy who stands up and says, gee, okay, we've just ended a 9-year war in Iraq that's completely illegal, that if we were following the Constitution would never have happened in the first place. And, is he the lone voice in the wilderness that stands up on the floor of the Congress and holds a Constitution above his head saying, has anybody read this thing? You took an oath to uphold it. Did you actually freaking read it? And, and then I see, Mitt Romney, or, it's going to be that scumbag Newt Gingrich. And it's just, it goes on and on and on. And if you break it down, people would say, okay, well, do you not want war? Fine, you should vote for Ron Paul. Do you not want the Fed? Then you should vote for Ron Paul. Do you not want illegal wars and a return to constitutional economics? Then, yeah, you should vote for Ron Paul if you break it down. But instead, the Republicans don't want him because their snout is in the trough with the Democrats at the same time. So again, I hope and dream that there's somebody out there with money, somebody out there with power that's not part of the scum power elite. You know, Benjamin Fulford holds out the hope of the White Dragon Society. There's a group that holds out the hope of Nasara. There's other people that claim the military at some point is going to step in. But there's always some savior out there that's going to fix the mess that's been created by the ignorance of the people, by their being dumbed down. And I said, and on the cover of I believe, Time Magazine's Person of the Year is a woman that was involved in the Occupy LA. So the protester is the Person of the Year. Finally, the liberal media is stepping up to this. You know, when the Occupy New York and Occupy LA movement is stepping up. But again, what was the point? The point of it being is that, you know, what do we want? We don't know. When do we want it? We don't care. At least with the Tea Party, which was under Dick Armey with the Republicans, they got people elected to Congress that actually did something about something. Also today, by the way, the deal that was made with the Republicans to try to stop, with the Tea Party guys, to try to stop this massive runaway spending, the deal was they were going to set up a super committee to cut $2 or $3 trillion out of the budget, and they had to vote on a balanced budget amendment. Those were the two deals that were cut back in April for them to continue running the government. Well, what did they do? They put a super committee together so that the Congress didn't have to do their job, so that the Congress could say, oh, well, these 12 guys, these 6 Republicans and 6 Democrats, they're going to fix it all. And guess what? They didn't. They put their thumbs up their nose for however many, 6 months or so, and came out and just went, well, we don't know how to fix anything. And then what happens? Today, the Senate voted on a balanced budget amendment, of course voted it down, and they said, okay, there you go. We've lived up to our end of the deal, so there's no balanced budget amendment. Oh, and by the way, there's no way to cut any money out of the economy either. And that's why we're going to see another shutdown here probably in another couple of weeks, you know, over all this stuff. So anyway, well, John, look, I can't thank you enough for calling in. I got to get to a bunch of people here. We're going to have Kerry Cassidy coming up on the break. But feel free to call in anytime with any thoughts and, you know, any thoughts or any ideas or any enlightenment that you have, okay?
I will. And I tell Kerry I said hi. I love her work.
Okay, thanks a lot, John. Let's talk. We haven't talked to my buddy for a while. I can't leave him on for too long, but let's talk to my pal Kevin Shaw. How you doing, Kevin? Up in Canada, how's it going?
I'm doing well, Sean. Good to talk to you.
Thanks. What's up, man?
Well, for a while I couldn't get through on this number, but it must have been the carrier I was using. But I'm here now. Gosh darn it!
I'm so sorry.
Here's a question and kind of an interesting scenario to that I've been kind of rolling around. You mentioned a while ago that Barack Obama was going to have his Kennedy moment, and I'm wondering if that is something that is being engineered for the coming year.
Wow. Well, you know, I mean, he's had a few, but you know, I mean, well, I'm not exactly sure what you would call it. Would you call him, you know, Osama bin Laden? You know, the death of Osama bin Laden, his Kennedy moment. I mean,
did we all believe that Osama bin Laden was still alive? I sure didn't.
Again, but let me give you an example of this, okay? George Bush, after they captured Saddam Hussein, by the way, which is another fake, because Saddam Hussein was captured 2 weeks into that war, and then they pulled him like a rabbit out of a hat in December of 2003. But this is what George Bush said. He said the success of yesterday's mission, I'm not going to do the voice or make fun of her, you know, the success of yesterday's mission is a tribute to our men and women now serving in Iraq. The operation was based on the superb work of intelligence analysts who found the dictator's footprints in a vast country. The operation was carried out with skill and precision by a brave fighting force. Our servicemen and women and our coalition allies have faced many dangers in the hunt for members of the fallen regime and in their effort to bring hope and freedom to the Iraqi people. Their work continues, and so do the risks. Today, on behalf of the nation, I thank the members of our armed forces, and I congratulate them. Now, that's George Bush. That's the guy that everybody thinks was the idiot, okay? Let me read. Now, this is his vindication. Let me read what is the most malignantly narcissistic statement. It's not just we have a dream, it's I am the dream. Okay, here's Barack Obama. On May 1st of 2011, he says, and so, shortly after taking office, I directed Leon Panetta, the director of the CIA, to make the killing or capture of bin Laden the top priority of my war against al-Qaeda. And even as I continued our broader efforts to disrupt, dismantle, and defeat his network, Then last August, after years of painstaking work by my intelligence community, I was briefed on a possible lead to bin Laden. It was far from certain, and it took many months to run this thread to ground. I met repeatedly with my national security team as we developed more information about the possibility that we had located bin Laden hiding within a compound deep inside Pakistan. And finally, last week, I determined that I had enough intelligence to take action, and I authorized an operation to get Osama bin Laden and bring him to justice. Today, at my direction, the United States launched a targeted operation against the compound in Abbottabad, Pakistan. You get it?
My only question is, whose hand is up the puppet?
It's just, well, it's just crazy. I mean, he's, and again, what's he going to do? It's going to be class warfare because he's already starting it. He's saying, it's the middle class versus everybody else. So as far as this Kennedy moment goes, I think he's just, he has 9 cabinet members he's not even met with. He's always in Air Force One. He's always on vacation. He's taken more vacation time than Bush did in 8 years, and Bush was considered the biggest goof-off ever to be president of the United States. Right. And again, the challenge here being is there are still people out there like Orly Tates, who I hope to have on my show here, who's the Russian attorney who is fighting tooth and nail in New Hampshire to disallow Barack Obama from the New Hampshire ballot unless he can prove citizenship.
Huh.
And I don't know how it's going. Yeah, go.
Well, I think it's also interesting. You mentioned in Indiana, and I think that in the next year or so, you're going to start to see states secede from the Union. And, can you blame them, really?
Well, I don't think here's how I think it's going to break down, though, Kevin, is that the only state that can really secede from the Union legally would be Texas, because the Lone Star Republic of Texas has never legally been a state in the Union. They are an independent country which belongs to the Union by a treaty that they sign ceremonially every 2 years, which is actually part of the whole Treaty of Hidalgo. But again, they were never actually a nation that was annexed by the Union, so to speak. Even during the Confederacy, during the Civil War, they didn't really have to secede because they were already an independent nation state. Now, what I think is going to happen is that if the economic secession that's going to occur has to essentially be a series of banks that have to be set up by the states, very much like North Dakota, which not only has a private bank that's run by the state of North Dakota, but now is fabulously wealthy because of the Bakken oil fields in North Dakota. And for the last 2 years, there's been this massive gold rush, if you will, of people, lines around the block at the assayer's office, of people trying to get their cut of the Bakken oil fields. And when the Bakken oil fields come down, they take that asset, they put that in the bank, and then the state then issues script against it, which is paying for all the projects. And now you're seeing that, and that's the way that they can monetize between the public and the private side. Now, after my screaming and yelling about this and literally calling Gavin Newsom's office, who's the lieutenant governor of California, and I know Gavin, like every day, I scream and say, why don't you do a bank? Why don't you do a bank? Why don't you do a bank? It would fix all your problems. They finally, this is the only good thing Jerry Brown's done so far, but he finally has now a blue ribbon commission, which he has empowered to study whether or not the state of California should start its own bank. And if you take California's assets, put them in a bank, and allow those assets to then accrue interest and begin writing script for highways, for schools, for whatever it is you want to do it, that's the firing on Fort Sumter. That is going to be the beginning of the end, when the 5th largest economy on earth decides that it's finally going to turn away from the insanity of the Federal Reserve. That's going to be the secession, the economic secession. Not only do I not think the states have the will to secede, but the people themselves are not intelligent enough. Yeah, I mean, they've been so stupefied. I mean, that's the best term I can think of, is they've been stupefied. I mean, I've thought about terms like stupefaction, or what is a good term for people that are for forced ignorance, if you will. They don't know enough about it. You've seen the mortgage crisis happening, where people are getting kicked out of their homes because they don't want to study mortgage law, and they don't understand what a scam it is that the bank never loaned them any money in the first place. And the people that understood that, and the people that studied and went to seminars by crazy guys like me, kept their houses and stayed in their homes. What do you think? What's your opinion?
Well, economically, I think that the system is going to fail. I think it's interesting that the whole time wave zero thing. If you were to map out economically what was going on with that as well, I think at some point you're going to hit a wall, and I really think that is going to be sometime in 2012. We had the governor of Canada on public radio up here a couple of days ago.
Correct that. There's not a governor of Canada. You're talking about the prime minister of Canada, right?
I'm sorry. He's the governor of the Bank of Canada.
Oh, the governor of the Bank of Canada. Okay, all right.
Right.
What, Canada has a governor now? Okay, all right. Go ahead.
They actually call him the governor of the Bank of Canada, which again is a privately controlled central bank.
Got it.
That issues Canadian currency. And actually, it's very funny on the Canadian $2 bill. Did you know that there's an American flag flying over the Parliament building?
What?
I think I've got a $2 bill here. I can blow it up and send it to you. But there's actually an American flag flying over the Parliament building in Canada.
Wow, that's crazy.
Anyway, he was on the radio saying that he thinks that Canada is basically going to pull out of this thing way better than the Europeans and the Americans, and was basically completely ignorant of everything that was going on.
Give a plug for your radio show real quick. What's your radio show?
CHOY 105.5 FM. I'll be on probably over the break. Tune in, and CHOY.FM. There you go.
Kevin Stott, Strange Universe. We got Carrie Cassidy coming up next to talk about all this stuff. And I thought this was the perfect song for introduction to Carrie Cassidy, who needs to turn her Skype down because I'm echoing back in my ears. She should know better to not turn on her video when she's talking to somebody on Skype. That's Send Me an Angel. Says, here's my angel, Carrie Cassidy, ladies and gentlemen, coming into us. Carrie, you there?
Hi there. Yes, I am here.
You give me a wonderful opportunity to talk to you about this. We just had Benjamin Fulford on the show, and you probably heard what he had to say. What do you think?
Well, I caught the tail end of it, and I figured I had to come out here and do some damage control because you're ranking all over the place on David and
I am not ranking on David. I did not say that. There was some information on David's website that was incorrect. We corrected the information. You only caught the tail end of this. We corrected the information, and the information specifically about the civil case that was being filed. Whatever David has on his website is a civil case that was filed by Neil F. Keenan back in 1995 out of Rhode Island, which was the information that was there. So I will send David this information, and I'm not I did not rank on anybody as far as this goes. I knew he was upset. And again, the point being is that Benjamin Fulford was talking about how in this world, as you know, Carrie, because you're one of the most courageous people that I've ever met, I mean, you are the lowest lane of this. That Benjamin Fulford was saying that the kind of danger that people like us put ourselves in, and it's a little unfair because you didn't catch the entire gist of the conversation. The danger people put themselves in becomes sort of a buzz in the background. This being said, that he was storming off, according to him, down to what it sounded like, the secret lair of Rothschild headquarters, to go pound his fist on the door and on the desk and basically threaten them with, fix the world or else. So my question to you is that we have a situation here where it was very interesting on your program that you had somebody anonymously calling in, and you had David losing his mind, and I mean it was weird. It was fun, but it was very interesting. It was what was going on.
Well, look, what I want to say here though is, I'm kind of joking with you, and I have to say for the listeners that Sean is an old friend, so I like to tease him and all this kind of thing,
and
teasing aside, what did happen with David was legitimate. Now, let me give some background to some of these people because they don't understand that the players in this drama, some of which are very well known to Camelot, okay? There were some assumptions made by the listeners, maybe in part because of the way I behaved, was that I didn't know Anonymous. That's not true.
Oh,
I know Anonymous very well.
Did you tell us anything about him?
I can tell you that, yes, he donned a fake Irish accent to protect his identity. Hello.
Okay, and I said that was one of the worst Irish accents that I've ever heard, so thank you. I picked that out because my grandmother's Irish, and I'm like, this guy is faking I mean, it's like I kept expecting, oh, let me show you where my lucky charms are with me pot of gold. Oh.
I know, and it's just whatever. These kind of things go on, and people are trying to protect themselves. The thing happened. In other words, it was a drama, and it did happen, blow by blow. And this person legitimately was far enough away, and they weren't even supposed to be doing what they were doing. But their desire to protect David basically had them do something completely unprecedented. And they were on a very untraceable line, a very special phone line. And all I can say is they played it as close to the chest as possible, while at the same time sending out a message which did get delivered. And you, of all people, should know that this is how people working in and around alphabet agencies, etc., they have to work in a certain way. So there were certain codes, if you will, put into the conversation that gave a heads up to lots of different levels in this game. And apparently the threats, if I'm to be, if this is to be believed, came from a lower level. So first of all, he had to deal with the lower level people and make it very abundantly clear that that their lives would be very, very difficult if they angered a certain group of people. And then he also was communicating with some other levels. And there are some people out there that don't want to deal with, the off-world bunch, so to speak. They, the minute you go into that arena, they want to giggle and all this kind of nonsense, and they just don't get it. So I'm sorry to tell those people that, as you know, this is a very real scenario, so you have to deal with different levels, right?
Right, absolutely.
So this thing was not bogus. It was not just drama for the sake of drama or any of that, the rest of that crap. I will say that the contact who relayed the threats to David is a legitimate individual. He's highly respected. Absolutely brilliant, hands down brilliant, and we know him quite well.
And yet he's doling death threats out to people like David Wilcock.
Well, he's relaying messages.
Oh, he's relaying. Okay, I see. Okay, so it's not like I'm gonna come kill you, but people I know are gonna come and get you because of. And why exactly? What exactly was David releasing? I mean, for example, it's right there, and unfortunately, I don't think David's read. And in all fairness, and I'll talk about this in person, but I don't think he's done his homework on this because whatever's up on his website, he hasn't. He doesn't know how to use Pacer. He doesn't have Pacer. He doesn't have a legal background. I got into this, and it took me quite some time to do this, to download this 140-page complaint that's there. The complaint that he's got up on his website is the same guy who seems to have actually filed a rather crackpot complaint against like Marge Harkenbacher Schmarfer or whatever out of Rhode Island back in 1995 that was then summarily dismissed. Same guy, by the way, now has put in civil complaint docket CV08500 and it's very interesting because his name is Neil F. Keenan, and it's under Judge John F. Keenan, so I'm wondering if there's some relation between the two of them. And again, the information on David's website is incorrect, which means a lot of people are going to go to that, try to download it and say, well, David's lying or this is a hoax or whatever, but it took us several hours of sorting through this stuff to be able to actually put this in. Actually, Fulford then finally sent me the PDF. Well, actually, we found it before he did. Sent it to me, but he sent me the PDF of the entire case, and I'm reading through this case about the bonds and whatever else. But again, he's suing the United Nations, he's suing the Secretary General of the United Nations, he's suing all these people in regards to all this. So, since it's now public record, and you've got attorneys handling this, what is it exactly that David is releasing that he's supposedly being threatened about?
Well, it's not. It's a combination of things, but apparently. It's more centered around the Book of Codes and the, I don't have it in front of me, but Maca.
Okay. It's all right. Go ahead.
Maca
whatever you
something.
think it is. The Maca something. Okay. All right.
Yeah, it's more centered around that he apparently, or now this is I haven't gotten confirmation of this, other than David is saying he has been shown these documents. Okay.
Okay.
So he apparently what that does is change the whole playing field, because those particular documents, those two things, are first of all, they're hidden in the Philippines apparently. So getting copies of them, I have been told, is next to impossible. And the idea that he could have them or copies of them, which has to be copies because I was told it was impossible for him to have the real thing, puts him in risk. And if I understood correctly, it's more this, and revealing some of what is in these documents in connection with this, which is one of many lawsuits, is my understanding, on these issues. Which, again, the White Hats, and they have a website called the Dark Cabal Blogspot, and it's T Dark Cabal. And if you want to get the link, I'm not saying it right. Let me see if I can bring it up on my computer so I can get it out there. Okay. They've done all their homework in this regard, and they put 1 million documents in this regard, and it has to do with the Wanta stuff, has to do with, there's all these, specifically the Falcone thing, and so on. And I've had dialogues with these people and so on and so forth. There are people that have much more documentation along these lines than it appears, than David does, of course. But it's convoluted, but it all comes back down to the gold, okay?
Right.
And it has to do with folding the financial system at this moment. So it's more the idea that I guess there may be some people named in big families, and apparently David is not going to do that. He's assured people that he's not going to do that, and he's been advised not to do that. But at the same time, it's a matter of connecting these dots. And so this is what David is doing. It's not that he has information that hasn't been out there for, 20 years at least.
Yeah, for forever, yes.
Okay, but it's true that you are very knowledgeable in this particular area, so you could actually help David with your perspective.
And I would love to. And again, and here's the closing music. Carrie, it's an honor to have you on. I want to thank you again for being who you are, being as courageous as you are. I wanted to thank you also for helping me get this gig with American Freedom Radio. And you're an angel, and God bless you now and always. And we'll talk about this maybe tomorrow night, okay?
Okay. You take care, Sean.
Thank you, darling. Our revels now are ended. These are actors, as I foretold you, we're all spirits and are melted into air, into thin air. And like the baseless fabric of this vision, the cloud-capped towers, the gorgeous palaces, the solemn temples, the great globe itself, yea, all which inherit it shall dissolve. And like this insubstantial pageant faded, leave not a rack behind. We are such stuff as dreams are made of, and our little lives are rounded with a sleep. Sleep tight. Thanks for being my friends. I will see you tomorrow night. Have a strange universe.
No rules, no rules, no taboo topics, no taboo topics, no fear of doom, no fear of doom. We are American Freedom Radio, American Freedom Radio.